welcome to everybody, and I'm going to try and be as brisk as I can, because I know sometimes these things, it's quite hard to concentrate for too long on the screens, especially if you've been on the screens all day long. So have we got apologies for absent, Neil?
Yes, Chairman, I've had apologies from David Butler Rule.
Yes. Unfortunately, he's had COVID, and he's not feeling that great. But I've sent him our best wishes anyway. So that's that. So are there any other apologies?
None, Chair.
None, Chairman. Right.
Okay, sorry, I believe Councillor Ozog is indicating.
Yes.
Councillor Mrs. Ozog, yeah.
Yes, sorry.
Yes. Can I, apologies for the lateness, submit late apologies for Mr. Ozog. But he's had to work this evening, so he won't be able to attend.
Okay.
Don't worry.
Thank you.
I'm sure you'll keep him updated. Thank you.
I will do.
Right. So have we got any declarations of interest? No. In that case, if there's no declarations of interest, I'm moving on to agenda item 3, which is to confirm the minutes of the meeting of the Joint Transportation Board on the 22nd of September, pages 1 to 6. Anybody want to raise anything under the minutes? Confirm that they're okay. Thank you. I'm taking the silence as affirmation. Thank you. Are there any urgent items, Neil?
None, Chairman.
Thank you very much. And references from any other committees?
No, again, none, Chairman.
No. Right. So moving on to agenda item 6, which is matters arising. This report advises members on the progress of matters arising at the previous meetings of the board, and they're there under appendix A. So is there something anybody wants to pull out from there? You'll see that they're all listed there. Most of them are being sorted or on the way to be sorted fairly soon.
Perhaps we should go through some of them.
Right. So let's start one, the fast track one. Shane, is Shane here tonight? No,
Chairman, I've had no response from Mr. Hamers now for two meetings.
Right. Okay. Well, perhaps we'll send him a little reminder that as he was unable to come to the meetings, perhaps he will be kind enough to send us in a written report, which will circulate to members. Is that okay? Then
I think that's fair. Can I just add a couple of things which came from Fast Track board that I'm actually on, and that is that the tunnel between Bluewater and Whitehill is actually progressing, and the expectation, of course, is that the Fast Track will go through there. Similarly, they are progressing on the new contract and the electric buses for this particular facility. Perhaps I should have been a bit more ready to give further updates on that, because I was there, but I was expecting him to be here, so I haven't actually got anything to hand. But I think these are the highlights of it. The other concern was probably not of great concern to us, but the charges that they're now going to impose upon utilities that actually use the Fast Track roads for their repairs. But that were the main things from the last board meeting.
Well, thank you for that. That's useful. Right. Parking at English Park, yellow lines are to be installed. And then obviously there is the issue of enforcement, and the TROs are still to be resolved. And I think you have to say, so that's another outstanding issue, but we might be able to, we've got
we have Lookman here, have we not?
I haven't seen this.
Yes.
Is there any update on that, or is it?
Sorry, could you repeat which one is that?
It's the parking issues at English Park, Luffman.
I don't have any update on that.
Okay.
Sorry to say.
Well, we'll have to ask for that to be come forward
I
as
can
well.
always follow it up later.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Issues of the busways by motorists. That's a report is going to the cabinet, and that's yet to be approved. And again, that might be something for Shane to include in his reply to us. It says early 2021. Then we've got traffic congestion arising from the Dartford crossing. Well, obviously we know that that's an ongoing issue, and we're going to invite someone early 2021 to give us an update on that.
Chairman, if I may,
Yeah.
I circulated earlier today a brief update from Thomas
You did.
Whittingham,
You did.
and he has asked that any queries on the update that he circulated go to him direct by email, so that he can give them full responses. That should cover some of item 4.
Yeah.
Thomas was on Thomas, again, it's been very difficult trying to get officers to attend the meeting because of COVID at the moment.
That's right. That's right.
Thomas was unwilling. I won't say he was unwilling to attend because that sounds bad, but he wants when he wants to come, he wants to come with a lot to say, and he didn't feel he had a huge input for tonight. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but a great.
Hello, Chair.
Yeah.
Hello, Anne, can I come in there?
Oh no, I was going to say he did send us an update earlier today, didn't he, as well? So yes, Peter. Yes, go.
Yeah, sorry, I was indicating earlier to talk just about the English Park issue. I wonder if Logman could give me a call at his convenience, because I just want to clarify a few issues with him on that matter, because I think a lot of that's been dealt with.
Well, that's thank you, Peter. That would be useful. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Thanks, Logman.
I'm happy to do so.
Yeah.
Chairman,
Yeah.
Anne,
Yeah. Sure.
the Govia rail link that's been ongoing with the grant that we were going to get, and I know Brian was dealing with that. Have we got any more on it at all?
Can we bring that up as a separate issue, Sue? Sorry, we haven't got it.
No, I have raised it in the past,
Yeah.
And I know that you said you would keep a watching brief on that,
Yeah.
Brian. So, Chairman, I don't know whether or not you wanted to mention trying to find out what's going on with that one.
Certainly, I'm sure we can do that. And then Brian
Thank
might have more of an
Yeah.
entree into that.
I can answer that one now.
You can
Absolutely
take it up
nothing.
on it.
Yeah,
Go then,
absolutely.
Brian.
Sorry, absolutely nothing at the moment. They are just working under the COVID restrictions, which is the excuse for everything, Sue.
Yeah, tell me about it.
And
Okay.
all I get back from him is, we are waiting for the Department of Transport, but the Department of Transport are working for COVID, and it goes round and round in circles. Sue. But I think, Neil, we should put this onto our list of action items, and put me down to follow it up with them before the next meeting. But
Thank you for that. Yes, I'm
nothing.
grateful. I'm grateful for that. So I'm going on to 5, which is the outstanding thing at Sutton at Hone and Hawley. Implementation of the scheme was halted, more pressing issues, and some costings to see whether the KCC member would be considered favourably. So I don't know if any progress has been made on that, and the county member there will be Mr. Kite. So I don't know if there's any more on that.
So perhaps again, Neil could be good enough to send that county member an email asking him to be prepared to give us an update at the next meeting.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure that'll be all right. Okay then. Future of the bus routes. That's a good news story, isn't it? That one, because I think they announced now that they're reconsidered that, and it should all be all right for us. Is that? Am I correct in that? Thought they'd made an announcement that they've reconsidered and that they weren't going to, not going to withdraw the 2 routes.
Yes, that
Correct, isn't
is the case. Yeah, so
Yeah.
we're keeping our fingers crossed. Although that is subject to them reviewing it after the pandemic is gone down, and they might review it again. But for now, they're not going to do anything. They're just going to leave it the way it is.
It'd be useful if we could find out as well the usage of that, given that there's new school is there now, and how well it's used by, you know, now that the new academy there is open and everything. How many youngsters are actually making use of that bus service as well? Because I think that was one of our concerns. Was it was ridiculous to withdraw it when there was actually going to be extra provision needed there in the future. So I don't know if Mrs. Cole might be able to pick that up and find out, you know, what's going on with that there under Stone. So that's that. Okay. Drains could be jetted. That's all I've heard there. Nothing more, I'm sure, on that one. But I'm sure Jan will let me know if that hasn't been done or whether that's the thing. And then, obviously, I don't know whether Councillor Davis was able to meet for the issues on Chatsworth and Arundel Road. I don't know. I've heard nothing from Matthew, so I'm hoping again maybe silence is good news.
Has he approached you, Denise, any further?
Hello, good evening, Chair. He hasn't, but he has been in touch, as advised to him, to escalate it to senior within that team, and I believe they did confirm to him an update. It's going to be reviewed again for some maybe potential bollards, but I think Councillor Davis was happy with the current response in that team. So there is further work on it, but Councillor Davis is fully aware of the situation.
I'm sure he would have been in touch if he'd, you know, because, you know, he's been quite zealous about this one. So I'm sure if he wasn't happy, he would have been in touch with us about that. So, okay, so that's the matters arising.
So, Julie, did you want to come in on this one, I think?
Yeah. Just on the bus route. Sorry, I was a bit slow.
Sorry.
It was just for my understanding, because I know initially they said that they would delay the decision because of COVID, and that was halfway through the year. And then there was another email sent round, I believe, by Member Services, perhaps about 2 or 3 weeks ago, in which I thought they said that they would not go ahead at all. And that wasn't subject to COVID, but they did reserve the right to review it at a later date. I just wanted some clarity because there have been sort of 2 responses, and is there a difference? Is it between the COVID or that's just my misunderstanding?
I think. Sorry.
Yeah, we can hear you, Lukman.
Yeah, yes, I think you're right, Councillor. I think the second one says definitely not going to do anything, but they have the right to review it because their view is they're still short of money, so to speak, and they've got a right to review what they do with these services. But I think they had enough objections from the likes of us and KCC to warrant them saying we're not going to do anything about it for now. And I think they have other things they're dealing with for now.
Yeah.
Okay,
thank you for clarifying. And just on the drains, I will get Jan to respond with regards to that.
On the drains. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
So what's this space then? What's this space? Okay then.
In regard to the drainage, I did follow it up following the last JTB, and I was advised by the drainage team that there were works already in the system for jetting. So I'm hoping that the problem has been alleviated, but obviously Councillor Ozog would like to contact me just to give me a further update, and I can chase it up again if the jetting hasn't worked at that site.
Yeah, for sure. One of us will be in, one or both of us will be in touch to confirm. As I say, I'm not sure that they have been done, but it could be that we've not seen it. So, yeah, we will follow up and let you know for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that, Denise. Thank you. Right. Okay, members. So I'm going to move on to the Dartford Town Centre programme update, and welcome to Councillor Currans here, who has the portfolio for this at Dartford. We're going to have a presentation from the project manager, Keith Longley. Keith, we've had 2 quite extensive presentations on this already. So I just wondered if you could just update us on any progress since your last presentations, and if you have got any slides or a presentation, we can let Neil have that, and he can pass it on to the members to have a deeper look into. So are you there, Keith?
Yeah, good evening, Jay, and everybody else.
Thank you.
I do indeed have some slides, as is the way.
Okay.
I've tried to keep them as by way of an update.
Okay.
A picture speaks 1,000 words, so I'll try and get through them as quickly as possible, but not
you.
so fast to spoil anything. I'm going to try and share my screen now. Be grateful if someone would just confirm that you can see.
It is sharing, Keith. Yes.
Yeah.
Good.
Oh,
Okay.
yes.
We have you.
Thank you. Okay, so I will crack on. Is that going to work? There we go. So a very quick recap for those members that don't recall. I realise it's a year ago since the last pack of slides. That this is the general layout of the phasing for the project. Oh, phase 1 now generally complete. Phase 1A, which is the High Street, and Phase 2, which is the Instone Road and Highfield Road junctions, ready to go, subject to approval appointment on Thursday at Cabinet. And phases 3 and 4, now we need to start designing these. Quick update on the High Street. I have to say, I think it's something that the whole project team are quite proud of. It really has managed to transform things as we wanted to. And I think with respect to all, I think we're quite shocked that it's turned out as it did on all the CGIs as well. We now have some time-lapse photographs from our camera, which was on the roof of Argos, many of which you'd have seen last time. But it does give a nice record of how things changed, how the seasons went through, and how traffic was switched. And it's a good example in construction of how much of the work is in the ground, because as you come out of the ground, progresses so much more quickly. So here we are back in June, which when the first plant was installed. Very quickly, the other gardens replaced and the paving completed around them. And we even managed to get the nursery to make a visit for the photo. One of the other things which we're quite pleased is the effect of the lighting as well. And I'll touch on that when I talk about the High Street, I think. Makes a big difference to the whole way people feel about an area and the general safety as a vehicle and a pedestrian as well. Some of these made a bit of an appearance in the Dartford Messenger, some before and after photos. As you can see, I think one of the things that's brought such a difference to it is the lighter coloured paving, which seems to make the area lighter and cleaner. On this photo here, on the right-hand side, you'll see the parking. Something to note is that the permanent traffic orders came live just about 2 weeks ago, and Dartford are enforcing these quite carefully. We're absolutely intent to prevent people parking on the paving. Not only does it damage the paving, but it forms an obstruction to the pedestrians and non-motorised users that we're trying to encourage and trying to promote. The first 2 weeks, as you may be aware, are enforced with a warning notification. They still get a ticket, but it just says this is a warning. But as of this Friday, chargeable fixed penalty charges will be being issued. One of the things we have talked about, and I've advised in previous presentations, is that we've centred on the quality. We've been very lucky with the funding for this project, and we don't want to waste it. So we have chosen and used materials which will, we hope, look just the same in 50 years' time. The natural granite materials are obviously a very dense material, and they're, believe it or not, granite all the way through. So if they do get chipped or damaged, that gets repaired, but the granite will still look attractive and remain strong. These timber seats here are all designed to be, I wouldn't say easily, because it's not relatively expensive, but they're replaceable, which is the whole reason. So things don't just dilapidate and get, for instance, if there's some vandalism or some damage. We're very keen to keep these looking nice, and we bought a spare set which will be kept for a renewal basis. That certainly, we think, improved the general atmosphere of the area, and I think we all made note on the Remembrance Sunday gathering, which wasn't actually meant to be a gathering, but it was very nice to see several hundred people gathering in the gardens at a distance and at respectful, in a respectful manner. But these really did give a lovely atmosphere for the service and for the activity going on. So the next kind of thing that you'll start to see is the appearance of some A-boards. It's very, very much a soft opening. We just want to give new information as well as celebrate the good news that the scheme's complete. So there'll be some A-boards. These will help enforce the parking arrangements so that cars won't drive on the pavements. We're going to update and indeed clean and repair the bench seats that are around the town. We've got 3 of them at the moment. So they're going to have some new information to update, particularly on the high street as the scheme comes forward. We were talking about applying some banners on the street lights, but we're not going to do that at this stage. We don't think it's appropriate. We want to wait until the weather's better and hopefully the COVID situation has improved. We'll have something to celebrate in the spring. Something we also trying to progress is a mural on the side of the building there is shown, just to help improve the identity of the area. So it can become somewhere I can meet you in Brewery Square or whatever. Of course, the address still remains Market Street, but we quite like the idea of celebrating our garden area as calling it Brewery Square. Something else just to be aware of, and something that will become a bit more obvious in the next few weeks, we've decided to, and in part reaction to the but the change of use of the area in Market Street behind Iceland is the car parking. And so we've tried to be as innovative as we could, and we're actually reusing the contractor's compound area, which has been there for the best part of 18 months, as some interim car parking, some shopper and visitor parking. It's going to be very much a softer vegetative landscaped area. It's all applied to the surface, so it should at any time in the future its use not be as useful as we hope, or there should be some other reason to remove it, it can be done so easily. Probably could have added some interim photos in here, but the weather's been so awful, the photos weren't very good. But just as a key, we're using timber curbs, and it really does look very nice, and I think appropriate for its setting in a conservation area next to the river and next to the old house. The other things we're doing is trying to remove the eyesore of the bins from the high street, or from the highway rather. And I think part of that is we want to get the businesses to put the bins on their own land, but where they can't, we want to provide some sensible alternatives, both to make them look a bit nicer, but also to give some greater security, because part of the problem is these bins are overflowing because private individuals put their rubbish in them. So we'll be purchasing some relatively simple bin stores. This is an early artist's impression. In fact, the bins here in this slide here are going to go where that car is on the left-hand side on the Iceland land. We're also going to be providing 2 bin stores opposite the New York Deli on Marketplace to remove those bins off the street. So I'll just move as quickly as I can onto the update with the high street, and there have been some developments. First one is that we, as I say, pending approval to appoint our contractor, will be commencing work. It's probably going to be February now. Things have got delayed a little bit. Members may be aware that we had to re-tender for all sorts of reasons, principally because of the COVID effect on the market and contractor pricing. But we're all systems go, everything's designed, and one of the final things I need to do is drive through approval with the Highway Authority. But we've got some nice CGIs. I think something that's probably worth noting is the CGIs that our consultants have produced have proven very accurate, and we've been very pleased with them. In essence, the scheme is relatively simple. We're repaving the high street, improving the crossfalls, simplifying things basically, making it less like an old road, removing clutter, making it easier to use for the market, but just generally making it an easier place to clean and maintain. Of course, no significant work has been done here since the mid-80s, and just settlement of underground conditions and things. There are lots of puddles and things on a rainy day, which obviously our design will remove. The other key item of this is, and it's pertinent in terms of the current requirements for social distancing, but prior to that, there was an aspiration to, on market day in particular, improve the experience for visitors and shoppers. As you may be aware, on a busy market day, which we hope will be returning soon, it's actually quite tight to get down alongside the stall, particularly if someone should be standing there viewing items or a mobility scooter or a pushchair and whatever. So we're seeking to move the channel over and narrow the market slightly. And I've got some my attempts at some graphics here, but go with it. This is effectively the current situation, and the proposal is to move just things back that little bit. Obviously aids general municipal safety in terms of fire and other emergency evacuations, but the main idea is just to make it a nicer place to visit. The other key element of the project will be to improve One Bell Corner, which has obviously become a little bit of a disappointment, I think, over the years. The first action will be to repave it as shown in the CGI here, providing some extra seating, a pleasant area to meet. It's also going to be a fee earning area for the council because we'll be able to hire the area out for events. But one of the other key aspirations for this area is the introduction of some public art, something that LEADER is driving through. But in order to have a better background to that public art, we're going to be installing some green walls. I think I might have mentioned these in previous presentations, but I've got some updates to this now. And so this is just a CGI of effectively a before and after of how this area we hope will look. The vertical planters, or whichever way you want to call them, they're a modular system, so they're specifically designed so they can be swapped out to have colourful designs as shown in the images here, but also it can just be plain and just makes them easier to maintain. But they will certainly give a more attractive backdrop to any public art, and we hope people want to come to Dartford to see this art, particularly as it may be Rolling Stones related, and take photographs of it. We're also seeking agreement from the building owner of British Heart Foundation to tidy up their end gable and put some kind of a matching mural on there. And the current sort of proposal is album spines from the back catalogue of the Rolling Stones, but all subject to be completed and discussed as part of the design there. Again, more CGIs, more befores and afters, but here's a view looking towards One Bell Corner, and this is quite pertinent. If you look at the crossfalls, it's good to see from the CGI what we're hoping to achieve. We're trying to integrate a plaza area here, to break away from the old road and the edges and the manhole covers and so on, and the greys, and improve the whole area to make it a more pleasant, more open, clean area. Then the other element of the work which is being designed, we have tenders for, and we're poised to proceed and appoint and commence work in February, we hope, with the junction improvements on Instone Road and Highfield Road. And I've just seen I've got a typo in the title there. I've probably reported on this before, but the key items for this junction here at Instone Road is to improve the geometry of the junction and improve crossing facilities with traffic signals. And those traffic signals at this junction here will be linked to the crossing that crosses Instone Road. Once again, we'll be using the same high quality granite materials, introducing planters here, making a nice garden area here, which of course is south facing, making these offices more attractive. And we're also trying to promote the pedestrian route from Lowfield Street down through behind the old Two Brewers pub into this area here, some of which is subject to some redevelopment ongoing, and also just generally improving the quality, taking away the uneven paving and making it a more palatable area. We're very conscious that this is the gateway to Dartford for many who come towards town from this direction. This is the first thing that they see. So we're very keen that this is a cleaner, safer environment, also easier to maintain going forward as well. And this is the West Hill Junction. This is a far more difficult challenge in terms of what we can actually do within the highway footprint. But in principle, we're tightening the geometry of the junction to reduce the width of crossings. We have a reduced width of crossing, it's less time on the signal cycle. And the other principal thing that we're introducing here is a new bus stop. This is basically to replace the bus stop that was on this side, and my cursor showing, to service the people emerging from the town centre who wish to go west. At the moment, you may recall, we have a temporary bus stop outside the sorting office. Hope that suffices.
Well, thank you very much, Keith. That was excellent. Rosanna, you've got the portfolio for this. Do you want to come in and any comments there first before I invite other members in?
Thank you. And can I just ask, are you making any pedestrian crossings? I've had people complain at the moment that round by the old Barclays Bank, they can't get across the road. I mean, I assume it's because traffic should be going slower, and there is a slight difference in the road there. So presumably they can cross there. But people have said, you know, it's a bit difficult. You've got the crossing by Holy Trinity, and then you haven't actually got a designated crossing for stopping traffic as you go round into Lowfield Street. So will there be more crossings in other parts of the town?
Rosanna, there are traffic lights on that corner, aren't there? As you come into, there are traffic lights sort of opposite Argos on that corner there. So I tend to cross, yeah.
No,
when
it's
you
further
come round by the Barclays,
It's further round down where Barclays Bank used to be.
Yeah, got you.
To get across from there into the Priory.
Okay, so just to respond to that, the general intention of this project and many other schemes nowadays is to remove the formal crossing points and to, you know, we can't use the phrase shared because that isn't safe, but to give this space back to pedestrians, have a more narrow or less wide road to make it easier to cross. So they're called uncontrolled crossings, and the uncontrolled crossing is to provide that access to the park outside the library.
Yeah.
That's why there's a change of paving and a level change. And likewise on the corner of Lowfield Street, just back from Barclays effectively, at a place where visibility is safe and it's easy to cross. You're quite correct, people do travel too quickly, but one of the other problems we've had is the parking. And with the traffic orders now being live, that will be resolved immediately.
Excellent.
We've actually set aside, I'm not sure it's something to discuss in this meeting, but we've set aside some additional funding for enforcement, particularly at the beginning of this scheme, so that the taxi bays, particularly those outside KFC, aren't abused, and so that the parking is adhered to for no other reason other than safety as well.
That's great. Can I just say that I think the town is looking really, really good, and I think an excellent job has been done so far, and I'm sure the rest of it is going to be just as good.
Well, we hope, thank you. We hope so. The buzzword at the moment is transformation, and it's just the whole kind of general atmosphere that we're hoping to improve as well. Very, very grateful for the funding. We're very fortunate as a town.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you. And I hope that's been useful to you, Rosanna, and particularly Lily's slides. Any other members want to comment on this? No?
Julie Ozog and Councillor Wells.
So,
Julie, ladies first.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. It's totally agree. The town is looking really nice. Just one question about the new paving, just out of interest. Is it more resistant to chewing gum and things like that being dropped? And the other point I'd like to make was about the buses going up to West Hill, as I say, living on West Hill, very much appreciate the fact that we're going to get a bus stop up the hill rather than halfway up the hill now. Is the bus stop going to remain outside of Home Gardens or just across from the station as well to service that small area as well? Thank you.
Yeah, okay. With regard to chewing gum and other mess on the surface, the granite has been specifically chosen because it's a very dense granite. Obviously, on a dry, dusty day, it will have some dirt and staining on it. But of course, on wet days, it looks amazing. But it's specifically been chosen to be easy to clean. It's something I probably need to chase internally, but we have set in place a monthly jet wash to maintain it and to stop the areas deteriorating so that it falls into the normal maintenance regime for the town centre cleaning. But one of the other elements of this is there's an impregnation treatment. It's a polymer applied, something that's applied with a spray, which seals the surface. I'm showing my hands here, but it seals the surface of the granite, which indeed is to help reduce the adhesion of chewing gum. One of the things we hope is that monthly jet wash will remove that chewing gum anyway.
Okay, that's good to hear. And of course, I'm sure our enforcement officers will dissuade anybody from depositing their chewing gum, but there's always going to be those that get away with it and don't care.
It's a modern thing, but it doesn't need to be any surface, anywhere, any place, whether it be central London or Dartford. You do need to maintain these things. So it is in hand. It is in hand. The other element is we've got regard to the bus stops. The main impact of the buses was to remove the buses, or the TfL buses in particular, from driving through Market Street to improve the air quality, improve the traffic congestion, and so on. They now are redirected and go via Home Gardens, mainly through road space and a lack of notice that we're able to give to the Hire Authority. But we should have by now carried out the improvements to Home Gardens. So the bus stops underneath the footbridge, that whole area is to be repaved. There's new seating to be improved. And until about a month ago, we were proceeding ahead with quite an innovative, large new bus shelter with a green roof, sedum roof, which we hope would bring some additional green to the area and just a nicer environment. That's actually turned out to be very expensive. So I'm negotiating with the suppliers now to see if they can do something with that. The other element of that area is we are going to carry out some improvements to the footbridge. Frankly, I think it's something that should be being carried out by county, but I know it's all subject to budgets. But there's a very significant colony of pigeons that live on the bearing shelf in there, and I've got some quite humorous photographs. It's like a battery hens sat on nests on the bearing shelf. We have to be careful of the time of year that we remove those, but we're going to be providing new netting to prevent the pigeons. Also going to be patching up the failed drainage on the bridge so that it's a more pleasant area to wait, and so that the droppings and so on don't build up beneath. So there's the first improvement to those bus stops, and so that service will continue through that route. And then indeed moving round into Highfield Road at the end of Spittal Street, there's a new bus stop there. It will be in design terms substandard, because there's simply not room, but we've pushed ahead with this on the basis that a bus stop that's non-standard is better than no bus stop. And those signals will be designed, or have been designed, with a specific need for, as soon as the bus moves onto the detector, the lights will very quickly cycle to green for the bus, so it gets its own cycle on the signals, so the buses move on quickly through the junction.
Thank you. That's really good to hear. Certainly, if I can just say, from a West Dartford perspective, that the bus stops going up to West Dartford by the bridge, as you say, they're not particularly pleasant at the moment, but they are well utilised. People coming out from Prospect Place with their shopping, that's the obvious bus stop for them at the moment. So that's good to hear. And as you say, any bus stop at the bottom by Highfield Road and Spittal Street is better than no bus stop at all.
The intention at Home Gardens is to triple the coverage of covered shelter.
That's good. Thank you.
Before I ask Richard to come in, can we talk about the buses at the other side, 429 and 414? Will there be a bus stop at Barclays Bank, or where is the bus stop for those two routes going to be?
Yeah, I probably should have included this in my update, actually. In the final scheme originally for Market Street, there's a permanent new bus stop included on a build out, which is currently blocked by the Bellway development hoarding. You may have recalled, I probably reported on this previously, we were a little bit frustrated previously that we were, because of the scaffolding that was installed by Bellway at pretty short notice, we weren't even able to provide a proper bus stop during the work, a temporary stop. Within the next couple of weeks, I hope a temporary shelter will be installed in Lowfield Street outside Barclays. And then as part of the phase 2 scheme starting the new year, as the works join up with phase 1 in Lowfield Street, a new permanent shelter will be installed on a build out so that effectively there's a proper bus lay-by in Lowfield Street. We're very aware, I share the frustration, and I feel very sorry for some of our bus passengers who've had to stand in the rain there. As you know, we've provided some benches, but it's been a pretty suboptimal experience for all, and we're trying our best. And you know, it's an expensive business putting shelters in, but we understand it's important. So there will be a permanent shelter.
Sorry, Richard, that might have been your question, but I just wanted to keep the theme of buses consistent.
It wasn't my question, but I wish I thought of it. So yeah, thank you. Thanks for asking. Thank you very much, Keith. I live near the town centre, so it's been really wonderful seeing how this has progressed over the last few months. And so I just want to say very well done to you under really difficult circumstances. So thank you. I've got a couple of questions. The first one is about the high street. Obviously, cars aren't supposed to be driving on the high street, but then they always have decided to drive on the high street. So the first question is, are our improvements going to stop cars driving on the high street kind of like late at night when they're not supposed to? My second question is regards what you were saying about the area behind the two brewers. I didn't realise there was that was going to be regenerated. So I wonder if you could say a bit more about what's going to be done there, because that's horrible at the moment. So anything that opens that area up and makes it nicer would be welcome. So thank you.
Well, okay, so I'll answer the second one first. By regeneration, I know there's a planning application for a small area there. There's a bit of wasteland.
Yeah.
For some residential development there. So we were keen to improve the area generally and to facilitate that bit of redevelopment there. We just like the idea. It's quite a nice walking route behind the two brewers. I'm sure one day the two brewers will be redeveloped.
Well,
particularly with the residential opposite. So that's what I meant by redevelopment. Interestingly enough, that service road that goes sort of right off Instone Road and down to the multi-storey car park, that's actually highway. And so I think, you know, it can't possibly have been a priority because of where it is, but it's bizarre that there are stumps of old lighting columns in the middle. So clearly as part of our redesign, we're putting the lighting on the outside. And just want to improve that pedestrian corridor. So, for instance, if you were walking towards, I was getting mixed up with Aldi and Lidl, but over opposite Sainsbury's.
Yeah, Lidl.
You've got a more attractive and safer walking route that's well lit and well paved.
Lovely.
I'm sorry, everyone. I tried to give short answers, but with regard to the use of vehicles in the high street, that's very much a priority. But we are limited by some of the current constraints. The key constraint is that the Lloyds Bank and Halifax have a car park at the rear. That's a historic use and access, and they access through what's called Banks Place. Down the side, it's kind of opposite Paddy Power. One of the key parts of phase 1, and again, it's further effectively accommodation works, is we are in negotiation, and there are no objections. So I just need to get it done and get hold of the landowners to provide a new access to their car parking in the rear from Suffolk Road. That will remove the need for any private cars to ever go in the high street. You may recall what we've talked about before, that we're going to be installing some hydraulic HVM rated bollards. So at the moment we've got they're actually temporary bollards outside the Wat Tyler, And there are more bollards up the other end at Hythe Street and indeed in Lowfield Street and Marketplace. All 4 of those locations will be, as part of the phase 1 scheme, replaced with electronically remotely controlled rising bollards. The control of those is, well, the control of them is actually very simple, but how they're controlled and where they're controlled from is something that's being discussed within the council at the moment, and basically in connection with other technology that may be being installed. But that will be the intention, that we have the flexibility to go from the current prohibition of 10 in the morning till 5 in the evening to be able to extend that traffic order to potentially remove all private cars from High Street, as I believe we should.
Yeah, absolutely.
Particularly as, you know, we want to promote the High Street, and as part of the scheme, and I nearly forgot in my discussion, a major part of the High Street improvement is the lighting. So at the moment, a lot of the lightings, most of the lightings, bracketed on the buildings. It's very old. It is maintained by the Highway Authority, but bizarrely, some of them we don't actually know how they're fed. They may be being fed from a private consumer unit, for all we know. So as part of the scheme improvements, we are giving a complete wholesale review and replacement of all the lighting in the High Street. And that will bring a significant change. And I think that's one of the reasons I included that slide from Market Street. Something that will go from a patchy, dark, pretty dingy atmosphere to a well-lit, warm area. The paving will be a lighter colour, so therefore it reflects the lighting more effectively anyway. And it will be completely different. We're also looking, because lighting technology is so easy now, to look at find some way of, subject to highway approval, controlling the lighting so we can change the lighting effect and maybe even the temperature. So depending on whether we have an event in the High Street or if we want to dim it down for Christmas lights, we'll be able to do that. But that's all subject to approval. But so yes, to go back to the original question though, that is one of the specific plans for the town to remove those cars that bomb up and down the High Street.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
It is a matter of enforcement now though. So it is enforceable on a Sunday, but that just boils down to cost. So I think one of the long-term ways is just to physically.
It's enforceable if they park there, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, members. Right. Well, thank you very much, Kate. That was excellent, and obviously we'll welcome you back sometime in the future when we start to celebrate all the opening and when we're all allowed out again. I'm sure it's going to be it's a wonderful asset to the town. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Back from historically when the river used to run all along Hythe Street and across there, along Lowfield Street and across, wasn't it? The river used to run all along there at one time, but there you go. So thank you for that. Let's move on to agenda item 8, which is the A282 Junction 1A2, but collaboration between Dartford Council and Highways England in a progress update. So who's going to do this for us? Is that
Luckman?
Luckman. Thank you, Luckman.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So yeah, it's about giving the members an update in terms of the collaboration we're doing between those 3 authorities. I think back in the last meeting on the 22nd of September, I informed the board about the collaboration, and the objective is to try and resolve or reduce the impact of traffic congestion at junctions 1A and 1B and the surrounding Dartford crossing. And also taking into consideration the impacts of new developments in the borough or surrounding areas. So as a result, we've agreed a memorandum of understanding between us with terms of reference, and we have an area of influence by which any developments in the area which may impact on that junction, we would consider. And between the 3 parties, we are a signatory to the memorandum of understanding. So in order to deliver the objective for bringing the collaborative effort together, we formed a steering group. And the steering group consists of 2 senior representatives from each signatory party. And as a matter of interest, Bexley Council are now very interested, and they've now decided to join us as part of that steering group. We've also engaged with the Ebbsfleet Development Corporation and Gravesham And with the but one of the things we've agreed is whatever we come up with is still subject to the protocols of each local highway authority. So clearly what we're coming up with by way of resolution or measures are subject to the approval of each local authority. So we're not overriding any protocols. So as part of this memorandum and what the steering group is working towards, we've identified a scope of works. And those scope of works are around, obviously, agreeing the memorandum of understanding, which is to formally sign it off. The forum have already signed it off as a group, and that was done in October 2020, where we should have had the total sign off of a formal sign off from members, but actually we're still waiting for Highways England to sign theirs off. Dartford have signed it off, and KCC have also signed it off. And we've also engaged with other stakeholders, and that was done in October 2020. So the stage we're at the moment is to carry out a review of all of the proposals that have been proposed in the past by particularly Highways England. So we've commissioned a consultant who's done that exercise for us. And only just before this meeting, I was having a meeting with the group. We had our second steering group meeting, and we were going through what the consultant produced. So initially, what we've got is a review of what's been done there in the past. And our next stage is to now do an options review. And what I mean by that is that we consider what we've done in the past. Is this suitable? Is this relevant? And if not, what else can we do? So that's the question. And we've just decided that the deadline for that should be February 2021. We want that to happen by February 2021. And at the end of the financial year, we would have liked to have an initial cost of what the costing for a feasibility proposal would be and what the program would be to put it in, which will then be subject to a viability study by the relevant authority, mainly the Highways England. So the steering group meets every 2 months, and so the next meeting we will be considering where to go in terms of whatever we're going to come up with. So there's still a bit of work to do, but the good news is we are talking to the right people, we're engaging with the right people, and hopefully we'll be able to come up with something that actually addresses the sort of long-standing issues we have around Junction 1A. So that's the positive news. The question is whether we can come up with something. It's a different question, but the main thing is we've got the right people around the table, and who are looking at potential developments coming along, and how we can work together to make sure we come up with measures to address existing traffic problems and any future problems that may come across because of the new developments. So that's where we are at the moment.
Well, thank you for that, Luthman. As I say, so you will expect something back February time, or
yes,
some progress in February time, and
absolutely.
Can we put a little bit of pressure on Highways England? Because
that is an interesting question you've asked, because where we are
happy for us to write if you think
well,
it would.
where we don't have complete agreement at the moment is in terms of how we consider the mitigation measures and how we go forward in terms of having a collective funding to look at a bigger scheme or long-term scheme for the solution. So it's interesting that you asked the question. This is where we're having to work a bit harder to try and get a single voice from Highways England in terms of working with us to take that forward, because they have an approach they take, which is about every development that comes on stream, you have to have a specific mitigation measure to address the impact of those developments or the impact of the traffic problems that may come from those developments. Whereas what we're trying to suggest to them is we should be looking at medium to long-term solutions rather than just coming up with individual solutions suggested as a result of each development. So yes, that's where we are working very hard to get better cooperation from Highways England, because clearly they have their ways of doing things, and we're trying to come up with a more collaborative way of doing things. Okay. So I'm not saying they're wrong. I don't think they're wrong. I just think they have a way of doing things, and we're basically saying, why don't we look at maybe a slightly different way of doing things?
Well, I think that's useful. I'm just trying to see if there's any tools in the thing that we can do to help and assist you. And I'm just wondering, Neil, for your guidance, should we reference this to Cabinet and something to come from Cabinet to say that we're, whilst we welcome all this, we're a little bit concerned, and that we would like, a bit more. I'm trying to think of the right words. Would we be able to?
I think there is a way you can help. However, the only thing I would say is we probably need to think about the wording about how we do it, because we are actually it's not that we're not getting cooperation. We are getting cooperation, but there is a difference of opinion in partly in the approach.
Yeah. But I'm anxious about the timescales, you see, because I don't want to be coming back in a year's time and saying, well, we're still waiting for them to come up with what they want to say. And I just wondered if there's any sort of thing that we can do, certainly with your joint conversations, but certainly as Dartford Cabinet might want to express their concerns. Or do you think it'd be worth getting the MP on side? He's taken quite an active interest on this, but again, I'll be sort of guided by you and the other members as to just as how we can help you, that's all.
I'm just wondering whether it's something I can take away and feed back to you later if members are happy with that.
Fine. Members, is that something you think might be useful?
Indeed, I think we should come back to this on every meeting, because it is a pinch point within the whole of this area. The traffic on there, and being on DCB, you hear that we're going to get money for that particular development, and they want to spend it just to do, because Amazon are coming and they're going to give us Tottenham Halfpenny, so we use that Tottenham Halfpenny, and then somebody else comes along with another £0.50. Oh, what can we do with this £0.50? It's just not right. You're quite right. We need to have a looking at the potential income from all the development. It comes to £5 million or whatever it is. Yeah, right. What do we get for £5 million? Because that's all we're going to have to actually create a better problem there. But equally, why are Bexley getting involved in this?
Because Bexley have always been concerned about the impact of Dartford Crossing. They could have some developments that may impact on Junction 1A. So even though we have a boundary area of influence that says any developments within this boundary, but we also have a caveat that any development significant significant traffic impact that may have an impact on Junction 1A, we would like to have a conversation about. So whether we can get some contribution for them to contribute to any studies that we do for future long-term projects or even long-term projects. And Bexley are up for it, although there are challenges around how they manage that as well.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay then. Okay. Well, thank you very much for that, Luthman. I don't see that we've got anybody else want to comment at the moment, but we can have a conversation, as I say, and you have our support. Anything we can do to try and see if we can, be helpful in these circumstances. Thank you very much, Luthman. So we're going to move on now to the next one, which is the Lower Thames Crossing Progress Report. Is that you again, Luthman?
Yes, that's me again. Yeah.
Carry on.
Okay. So yeah, again, this is a progress update, and there's been quite a bit of progress actually. So members will recall that as a background, that since February 2016, we've been very supportive of this project to provide a new road crossing of the River Thames linking Kent to Essex. And our support for the scheme was also reflected with our responses to Highways agencies consultation, one undertaken in March 2020 on the changes proposed to the routes, and one on the consultation on design refinements in August 2020. So we've been working with KCC, who are the leading highway authority for Kent, and KCC are collaborating the efforts on the modeling assessment to ensure that the impacts of the proposed crossing on Kent strategic road and local roads are assessed. So that relevant mitigations are identified. So if there are any impact on local roads, including that in Dartford, then we make sure that HE are able to fund any mitigation measures to address that. In addition, we continue to work with HEG separately to identify any other specific issues relating to the impact of construction traffic on local network. And also anything to do with air quality and in particular, reduce traffic noise. We've also highlighted the consideration for HE to consider the impact of other developments such as London Resort. So the progress to date is that because of the scale of this project, Highways England has to submit this proposal as part of a development consent order under the Planning Act in 2008. So HE submitted their DCO application to the Planning Inspectorate in October 2020. However, the Planning Inspectorate has raised a bit of a concern, and certain elements of their submission have therefore been withdrawn. Because of the concern that the Planning Inspectorate raised, HE have decided to withdraw their application. So which means the hearing on this will be delayed. So funny enough, before the meeting about the one I've just briefed you about, I went to another meeting earlier today, which is to walk us through why they've withdrawn their application. So what they've done is they've done that today, and they've taken us through quite a lot of exercise about what they need to update in their application. One of which is the construction traffic impacts. I think the Planning Inspectorate have sort of made a comment about the inadequacy of that information they've suggested, and also the navigational risk and jetty works, as well as the management of materials and waste. So there's quite a lot of issues they've got to address before they can resubmit. As far as Dartford is concerned, we will continue to engage with them on things like statement of common grounds, where we sit down with them and talk about things we agree with and things we still have issues on, and as well as engaging with KCC on the traffic modeling. So HE are going to confirm a new date for their submission, and according to today's meeting, they are thinking it's going to be maybe by the first quarter of next year. So maybe April 2021. So it's likely that before then, we've got quite a lot of work to do with them. And even at today's meeting, and they were still struggling about how they're going to go about what they're going to be including in their updates and to what level of engagement they need to have with local authorities. Unfortunately, they're suggesting some ambitious deadlines, which most local authorities are not quite happy with. And I think they've got that feedback. So there's still quite a lot of work to do. And I suspect that this is one I'm going to have to come back to the board to update you on. But that's where we are. They are literally going through their application again, going to try and update it, try to engage with stakeholders, and then go back, resubmit maybe in the end of Q1 of next year. So that's where we are.
Thank you very much for that. So again, it looks like it's going to have to be another agenda item, but I'm just thinking we will be meeting again February, Neil? Yeah.
March.
March. So if there's anything significant before then, I'm sure you could perhaps send us out a briefing note or an update on that. But any other members want to ask any questions on that?
No, there are none.
No, there are none. So again, thank you very much for that, Lufton. As I say, agenda item again, but if there is any significant news or anything, well, I think, you know, that'd be good to get to, you know, an update out to members in the interim. So thank you for that. So we're going to move on to agenda item 10, which is the adopted parking guidance. And that's update on the pilot for the parking management thing. So is that you, that's, again, that's all right, don't worry. Nice to see you. Carry on.
Yeah, I think as I think members will recall that in at the last meeting we considered this, and you were kind enough to recommend it to cabinet, and cabinet approved that we adopt this, and as well as the pilot study that we're doing at St. John's Road. So since that approval, we've met up with the Stonehouse councillors, including Councillor Richard Wells, and basically talking about the approach we should be taking in terms of the running the pilot and how we collect information from residents about the issues they're facing in St. John's Road. So we've had 2 meetings, and this is expected. The pilot is expected. Sorry, we've also involved the school, Brent School, because it's quite important. And in fact, most of the challenges you have around there is partly because of the traffic generated by the school.
The school, yeah.
So we've engaged with them as well. So at the moment, we're in the collection of information stage. We have had quite a number of information in, which is information that residents are sending to the councillors, and they're forwarding them to us based on the guidance, the new adopted guidance. And so we're going to do that review by January. We're going to be doing the analysis, and by February we should know what we're doing. And so there could be, obviously, one of the outcomes is to understand whether there is sufficient justification to include this in our program to take it forward. And then the other outcome is how do we improve the practical use of the guidance that we've put in. We will be working very closely with the portfolio holder, who is also Councillor Richard Wells, in trying to establish that program and trying to say whether this pilot that we've put in place is the best way to identify future programs for investigation and prioritization. So at the moment, yes, we're collecting the data. Probably where we're going to have challenges is where we're collecting data that are near misses or damage-only accidents, because we are wanting people to report on how many incidents they're getting throughout the time of the pilot study. And it may be that is a difficult data to collect. And without, if you want to get proper evidence, you're probably expecting people to give you pictures or be around when the incident happens. So that might be challenging. And the other thing we need to sort of be clear on is the criteria. When we get lots of sites that meet that criteria, but we know we cannot deliver all of this project in 1 year. So it's how we rank that and how we rank which site is the most important. So we're clearly also working with KCC on this, colleagues in KCC. But by the end of January, we should know what the outcome of the pilot study is, and we would know whether St. John's Road would be one of those sites we're putting forward for in the program. So that's where we are at the moment.
Thank you. Richard, did you want to comment on this at all? Is it part of your portfolio?
I think Lookman said it all, to be honest.
Okay.
I think from my perspective, it's going quite well, the study. I think the 2 ward councillors, Councillor Oliver, Councillor Green, are both engaging with it well, and the school as well. I mean, we didn't deliberately choose a school site. It was just that happened to come up, but we know that school sites are a particular issue in the borough. But so it's useful that we're using one of those for the pilot. And as Lookman said, this kind of doing the pilot serves the purpose not only of like looking at a particular area which is problematic, but it also means that we know the things that we've been asking for in the part of the process. We know how easy those will be to deliver, those bits of information will be to deliver, and we can see how valuable they are. So yeah, at the moment it's going well, but as Lukman says, there's a little way to go. So it would be interesting to revisit next meeting.
Thank you for that. Any other member want to comment on that? No, none at all?
Nope.
No, okay, well, thank you very much. Thank you for that. So let's then move over to going over the page to my hard copy. Members' inquiry items. And so you have an opportunity to raise the following questions in relation to capital review funding works, suggestions for future traffic regulation orders and street management proposals, questions on policies and plans, and suggestion of future agenda items. I've got two that I'd like to raise. I know Denise, she's already visited an area for me at Bexley Park, where residents in Abbey Drive, because they live up a little bit, they're getting blocked in. And I know Denise has been out and visited, and so has the officer from DBC. So I think there is a case there for me. So I'd like to put that on the list for implication. And I've been having I've managed to meet a gentleman from Phoenix Place, who is Dave Brand, who's works for trying to think. I always want to call it the co-op, but I think it's it's CEF or something like that, who wants to work with us. He's looking at all the parking problems in Phoenix Place, because they do have some residence parking, they have informal parking. A lot of people park there now because they work in the town. And that we've got commuter parking, and also with the new development opposite, we've got a lot of the construction workers parking there. So we kind of want to formalise that, and we've identified some areas. But again, I met Paul Newbard yesterday there. He's going to look at something, and I think we might want to look at that in conjunction with Highfield Road. But I'll be guided by. I'd like to, for that is something I'd like to progress if I can, and I'll have conversations with you, Richard, about Phoenix Place. But any other members want to talk about any other issues?
Perhaps I'll start, Chair. I think we've got two bus stories, in fact, a good news one and a bad news. I think I'll take the good news one, and I'll ask Councillor Reynolds to talk about the bad news with the 414. What I found out at the last Fast Track Advisory Board is that to meet their S100 funds, Redrow have actually subsidised an Arriva Click service for the Whitecliff, the eastern area of Ebbsfleet. What didn't come out of that meeting, I've since found out, and I think it's something that members should be aware of, is this is quite an extensive Arriva Click area. It takes an Ebbsfleet station, Danton Valley Hospital, and it does in fact replace the 484 and the 485 buses, which were not very desirable. So I do think that members should be aware of the fact that we have got a very good Arriva Click service from 6 o'clock in the morning till 1 o'clock in the morning, running over and the new developments and the old developments of Swanscombe as good public transport. So I don't know if anybody else has been aware of it, but I do suggest that we find out more about it, how well it does, and I would expect to bring somebody to speak to the next board meeting to make us aware of how well it has gone, to see if we can learn lessons from that, because what it's clearly doing is creating for part of the borough a very excellent public transport service. And other areas, like the ones that Councillor Reynolds and I have to represent, are the poor relations when it comes to public transport. So that's the good news. But the bad news, I think Councillor Reynolds will talk about the meeting we had with Arriva on the 414.
Yeah, thank you. So for those of you that aren't 100% up to date on every single bus route throughout the whole borough, the 414 starts in South Darrants, runs through Sutton-on-Hone and into Dartford. And over the last 2 months, I'd say, I've been getting a lot of complaints about it. At the start of lockdown, because of COVID, we learned that, in fact, Arriva had decided to move all of their bus services, downgrade them one step. So if they were every 15 minutes, they became every half an hour. If they were every half an hour, they became every hour. And that's what happens to the 414. It's the main sort of public transport service from the southern villages of the borough into Dartford, used by a lot of elderly residents around Cedar Drive in particular. And the service has become unreliable according to the complaints that we've received. It not been turning up. The timetables are not to be trusted. It breaks down frequently. It leaves people stranded. People have not been able to get on the bus because they've sent a smaller bus than the one that's normally sent, and all these complaints were coming in. So we met up with the representative from Arriva yesterday, and I do have some sympathy with some of the troubles they've been facing, and I think a lot of what we learned is actually applicable to everyone here who's a representative of a constituent, because the problems they're facing are affecting their entire network. One of the main ones seems to be the fact that drivers have to social distance. They have a lot of drivers that are considered vulnerable and therefore have not been able to return to work from furlough. They have also formerly been sharing a break area with other companies, which now is not allowed. So they're having to travel back to Northfleet when their break comes up, which obviously creates logistical issues with driver changeovers and things like that. So there are some of the current circumstances that are understandable, but that doesn't really help our residents. So we've asked about how things may improve looking forward. And although they admitted that during, particularly when the September, just after lockdown lifted, we did have passengers being left behind because of the restrictions of how many people are allowed on each bus now, and also the size of the buses that were being used for the services. They believe that they now have that much better under control. They're actually now apparently monitoring how many people are left behind and using that along with ticket sales as a guide to bring the services back up to a capacity more like pre-COVID. But in reality, we're not likely to see a service from Arriva that is going to be anything like pre-COVID for a very long time. At the moment, on the 414, when we inquired, the current concessions ticket sales, so the elderly ticket sales, are 25% of what they were in February. So part of the reason I think, realistically, that they're not delivering the service as reliably in my particular area for that route is because it's not viable. And they didn't admit as much, that were it not for government funding at the moment, Arriva would not be a viable company. So that was all very interesting. It makes it quite difficult for us to put any pressure on them, but I think it also shows that they're doing reasonably well in the circumstances, despite the complaints. Things have seemed, or their stats seem to show that things are improving. They said as an industry that there doesn't expect to be more than 90% return to transport usage for bus services post-COVID because of the changes in how people are working. That's what their industry feeling is. They also don't feel that they're going to be able to replace the elderly buses that are a lot of cause of the issues, particularly on the 414, because the 414, being a village route, can only take buses of the smaller size, which is why a lot of the time minibuses have been sent and therefore passengers have had to be left behind. The smaller buses, because they are only used on a small number of routes, they aren't as profitable, I take it, and therefore they're unlikely to replace them. So at the moment, I think some of the buses on that route are 10, 15 years old, and certainly in the foreseeable future, it doesn't look like Arriva are going to be replacing any buses anywhere. So you may notice, I would expect some of the experiences that I've had, certainly with complaints coming forward, as that fleet ages if the situation doesn't improve. I think that's most of the bad news. I've tried to give a summary of things that I think are useful across the board, as well as being specific to the course that I was taking up. I don't know if there's any questions. I may be able to answer them. I may have missed something, or Brian, you may like to add something.
Yeah, I'll just add a couple of points there. Yeah, I think the manager was being slightly economical with the truth, and it didn't want to challenge him that at the time. But the problem was getting drivers. But suddenly they were able to get 8 drivers to bring in Arriva Click into the Whitecliffe area. So I'm feeling we need to keep close watch on them and put pressure on them. If they're not getting encouragement and not getting pressure, they will take the easy option. And I'm also going to do a double check on what subsidies they are giving. I'm not aware of all sort of companies coming down to half services because of the funds they are getting. Certainly TfL haven't done that. And I think we need to determine whether this is actually true, what they're doing in the 414 and the 423, or whether they're just taking an easy option with us on that. He hasn't got sufficient vehicles, but when you've actually half the number of buses running and you haven't got enough buses, one starts to raise a question, why not? Yeah. And really, I think what I got out of that is I'm very coming concern that we've got areas which are well serviced with Fast Track, TfL, and now Arriva Click. And we've got other areas which are not doing so well. And I think we've got to keep monitoring that and determine how we can actually try and get up to an even distribution of public transport, based upon demand, of course, across the borough. Any other person wishing to observe upon that, their experience? Councillor Cozine.
Sorry, I'm getting there. Sorry, thank you. Being one of the councillors for Ebbsfleet, I have to say that the feedback from residents using the Click Arriva bus has been very positive. It's currently subsidised by EDC as well, which makes it cheaper for the user. My only concern is going forward is when they stop subsidising it and then the price goes up, and how's that going to affect the residents. But I take your point though, Councillor Garden, on some areas having better transport than others. Ebbsfleet has had a woeful bus service up until this point, so it's really refreshing to have this. However, we can't stop here. We need more transport facilities in Ebbsfleet. But thank you, that's why I just want to make that point.
Nobody else? Any other questions from people now? My throat's going. It's getting towards the end of my time. Well, I'll come back again now. We did ask KCC to come back to us on 2 different questions, and I think the clerk has actually circulated to you all what the procedure is with respect to getting a pedestrian crossing, although we've had a different view from within the city centre or town centre, and also weight and speed restrictions. Thank you, Denise, for that. The pedestrian crossing is quite clear now. I've got all the evidence that Councillor Allen and I need with one of our particular problems. So the number of 50 pedestrians and 1,000 vehicles per peak hour is what we really need to get back to the resident and make him aware of what the true situation is, whether it's what he thinks it should be or whether he doesn't. We know exactly where we are there, I think, Councillor Aaron, we can go back. Yeah. Very clear, this is the situation, this is the norm.
And there's not many people that cross the road there, I would say. Can I just go back to ask you and Lucas about the bus service? I'm just interested because partly we're talking about rural areas. And secondly, I'm interested about older people because after COVID, a lot of older people will come out. They haven't gone out or wanted to go on the buses or had the ability to go out because we've all been told to stay at home. So I think, you know, is this part of the equation?
I did raise that. I said it's okay saying that you're down to 20. So he said 25% of the concessions ticket sales in the last month compared to February and the expected sales. I said, well, okay, that may be that they're not coming out of the house and at the moment, but when they do, what you're going to do about the increase in demand? And he said that they're monitoring it on a weekly basis based on the sales that they're seeing. This is what he said anyway. The sales that they're seeing, the particular journeys that are generating the sales, they're getting the drivers to log if anybody is left behind due to the capacity of the bus being reached. And he also said that the same was being done for the timetabling. So where they've reduced a half-hourly service down to an hourly service, he said as the demand picks up, they will endeavour to return that back to the half-hourly, so that the capacity is met, both in terms of demand and frequency. I think that remains to be seen. Clearly, if it's currently operating at 25%, then most of those daily journeys I would expect will be unviable, and that they will we may risk them cutting it altogether. The morning and evening services for the particular 414 route are packed with the school children. So I could foresee that they may elect to keep those, and if the concession ticket sales don't return, potentially reduce or remove the midday ones. So that's something we certainly need to keep an eye on. But he gave a response that was satisfactory for now, I would say.
Yeah, I was going to say, because communication is the key there, and I'm just going to sort of talk about older people who wouldn't know, so they don't know about these changes, and then they can't go out, or they're not got the technology like some people have to actually know when the next bus is coming, you know. And so if you're going to go out there, you know, and stand for an hour, and then someone says, "Oh, that bus doesn't run anymore," I think it's just a shame that a lot of the older people will give up, if you know what I mean. They don't know, because they need to communicate and tell people what's happening.
Something that I forgot to raise on the meeting, but I'm going to follow up with him on, was the fact that a lot of the bus stops now, rather than the timetable, have a Q code, which you can only read using an iPhone or a Samsung Android, which for Cedar Drive, I would probably say is lower than average ownership of smartphones. So
absolutely,
that's something that certainly I do know I've got as a note to go back to him on, and that's probably something else that you all have probably had a complaint about.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Anyway, thank you very much. Thank you.
Perhaps Denise can, Denise, in terms of timetables, I recall sometime in the past that Kent tried to create a facility of putting up the timetables themselves from the central knowledge of all the timetables. Is that sort of gone by the wayside, or is there a way that if Arriva won't do it, will KCC do it?
Unfortunately, Brian, I mean, it is a public transport issue, so I'd have to take it back. I'm happy to take the question back.
Thank you.
Probably Shane Heimers or Dan Bruce. So I'll take that question back and respond.
How we can do something on that. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, then. So
we had our second question with respect to weight and speed restrictions. Again, we've got now we've got a reference onto legislation that we need to look at. But the initiative for this often, Denise, is coming either from councillors or maybe even parishes itself. So given that they now know where to look for the regulations, and if they should find that they feel a weight restriction perhaps is appropriate, or even a speed restriction, exactly what is the process of going through it, and how do we know whether this will be the right process and the attention it would receive from KCC, so they can get back to their members, residents, as we were going to be able to do with the pedestrian crossing, and say you might want it to be a speed restriction, but this is the rules, this is the norm, we're nowhere near it. Thank you, but not possible.
Well, residents should really be going via the parish if they're looking at any sort of highway improvement scheme or they're suggesting an improvement.
Parish or councillors?
The parish, and the highway improvement plans are between the parishes and the safety schemes team. So for Dartford, it would be Helen Cobby. I know Helen has worked very closely with a lot of the parishes in respect of their highway improvement plans. We've done a lot of work in Swanscombe where they had made suggestions. So the ideal is always going via that highway improvement plan, because that is really the wish list for the parish.
Yep.
And the parish are the gateway into what residents would like.
Yep.
It's not always going to be possible, but if we get the wish list together via the parish, then the safety schemes team can assess each and every request on that improvement.
Right. Yeah, obviously you're aware of the parish background to that question, but presumably does that not apply to ward councillors as well? Because the whole of the borough is not parished.
No, but councillors are quite welcome to email, and I always would forward on, or I raise an inquiry. The online fault reporting tool, you can put in requests for new. If there's any issues, if anyone can't find the appropriate subject and service type, I'm always happy to raise the inquiry on their behalf.
Yeah.
What happens is it would then go on to the safety schemes team, who would then assess it.
Okay.
Well, that's useful.
Exactly the same way, but in two different avenues. But both avenues go to the same team. But I mean, I receive regularly both means of communication, both either by email or via the highway improvement plan.
Yeah.
And Helen works closely with the operations team, so she does try to keep me up to date on any improvement plans that have been requested.
Yeah.
But that one in Birchwood Avenue, just to know, I spoke to Helen today, and I looked through all the inquiries that we've got logged, and she was unaware of that request. So I'm not sure which avenue that went through, that the customer was saying that it had been refused.
Yeah, okay, yeah, you're picking on that split one, yeah. I will, that was in Wilmington, wasn't it? The Wilmington one you're talking about.
Yes, yeah.
The speed thing is for, obviously, you know very well and very familiar with Common Lane and Wilmington, outside all the schools. We are doing quite a lot of work, and I think you can expect us a further request from the Wilmington Parish Council on that. So Brian and I will take that back to the Parish Council as well, and I'm sure we'll get that raised and taken forward via the Parish Council in Wilmington. The Birchwood Road one is just a gentleman who lives on a particular side of the road, opposite Birchwood Drive, and he's got an elderly wife who finds it quite hard to cross the road. But there is an island there as well, and I'm not really aware that many people walk down that side of the road to cross to the schools there myself, you know. So I think that's, and he did raise it. I think he went into the school and asked them to raise it, but it kind of just petered out a little bit, I think, there.
Oh, sorry, I misunderstood, because the email I got, I thought that it had been refused by KCC. So that's why I was looking through, you know, obviously.
No, nothing there.
No, there was nothing that KCC refused it. So
I got a feeling that, Brian, you was at a particular meeting some time back where I'm trying to think of the school safety officer. I can't think of her name, but she has she does all the banners and the safety and goes into schools and does all the talks. And I think it emanated from that. And she might have said, oh, well, I don't think it's possible for you to do what you could do. And I think the gentleman might have got the impression that it had been refused. She was just, I think, giving an outline as to how it was. Is that right, Brian?
I think that's the case, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, there are probably, 50 houses that side of the road. So 50 houses and requiring 50 pedestrian crossings every hour, 4 hours a day, doesn't sound to be practical, does it, Denise?
No, I don't think so.
Going back to means of communication, it's also a good point of interest. Go to the Kent County Council website. because there is useful information on applying for improvements and in your local area. So there is information on there on pedestrian crossings if you wish to request one, and you want to look at reducing speed. So that's another means of communication.
Okay.
And the general public can use if they want to suggest improvements in their area.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, are there any other?
Were you trying to speak? No.
Just must-
Okay. No. Moving ahead without one to speak. Okay. Sorry, Sanya.
Yeah. So, are there any other members who want to speak at all on any particular items? We've got suggestions for future agenda items, which I'm sure we can pick up from. There are some that will go on the agenda. Are there any other specific items that members would want to put on the agenda for next time? If you haven't got any, but you think of something later, get in touch with Neil and we'll certainly give it some consideration. Right. So, I think I'm on to agenda item 12, which is just item for information, and it's there. So that's there for your information. I think that brings us to the end of the agenda. I think it's been quite interesting and informative. I hope members have found it useful. Thank you for your forbearance with me working on a little tablet in my dining room. So thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you. See you.